I would like to just put my remarks in the context of something that Bishop Crosby has said many, many times in my hearing and in the hearing of others, and that is that he has absolutely no intention of closing any parishes. And instead, what he really wants is that parishes will be vibrant. He wants the parishes to be alive, to be vibrant, to be active, and he's put in place a number of initiatives that are starting to bear some fruit now in terms of helping parishes to get their feet on the ground, some of those that are struggling and so on. So that is the kind of the important thing I would want to mention first off, that the bishop really is concerned about the life of parishes in the diocese. As he is fond of saying more recently, strong parishes mean strong dioceses. So one of the things that we've been doing is something similar to actually what Father Toby is doing with you this evening, hearing from parishioners, what do they appreciate about their parish, what do they see as their needs for the parish, where is the parish going in the future, what does the parish need in order to go into the future confidently. And so one of the things that we've been doing also for many years in the diocese is we've been doing head counts. I don't know how many of you here are aware of that, because it happens like 3 Sundays in the spring and 3 Sundays in the fall. And somebody's counting bodies in the pew. And we get the figures at the Chancery office and we collate them and so on. And some of these figures have been very revealing. And let me just share the figures that we received from St. Mary's Parish. This is not this past couple of weeks, because there's a head count going on in the last few weeks. And it's not the figures from last spring, but 1 year ago. We're just getting the collation of the figures from the spring, so I don't have them quite yet. But a year ago, what we did is we took 3 Sundays and every Mass, and then we looked at those 3 Sundays and said, well, what is the highest number of any of those 3 Sundays at the 9 o'clock Mass? Or what is the highest number at Saturday night, 5 o'clock? Okay. So St. Mary's Church seats approximately 800 people. It's one of our larger churches, of course. Here's the figures. In this parish at 5 o'clock, the largest number of attendants was 105. 8 o'clock Sunday morning, the largest number was 110. 9:15, the largest number was 77. And the 11 o'clock Mass, the largest number was 2,000. You wish. 207. 207. Okay? So that's a weekend total, if our math is correct, of 499. So say 500. 500 for a whole weekend in a church that seats 800. It's not a good sign, is it? No. Just to let you know, you're not alone. This is a pattern we've seen right across the diocese. There are some notable exceptions, particularly in the Halton part of the diocese, Halton region, where the population is just exploding. And you can hardly build churches fast enough to accommodate people in that area of the diocese. But in many places throughout the diocese, I would say the majority, the numbers are somewhat similar. Maybe not quite as drastic, separation between capacity and numbers, but they're not encouraging, let's put it that way. And so one of the things that we've been encouraging parishes to do, and I shared this information with all the priests in the diocese in each of the deanery meetings last spring, we are encouraging parishes to really give some new thought to the number of Masses. St. Pope John Paul II said many years ago, there are way, way, way too many Masses being celebrated. And this is borne out in our statistics in the diocese. So over the last several months, since last spring when I mentioned it to the priests, I would say at least about 12 parishes in the diocese have changed their Mass schedule, reduced their Mass schedule, because they didn't need as many as they were having. And one of the reasons that we're encouraging this was a couple of reasons, but one of them is, and I would say this is the first reason that we're encouraging it, When you have a full church, you have a much, much better celebration of the liturgy. If you've been to Mass on Easter Sunday and the church is packed, what is the most frequent comment you hear after Mass? Boy, wouldn't it be nice if it was like this every Sunday? Because you feel like you're part of something. Who wants to go to church on a sinking ship? When you have very few people at Mass, especially in a large building like St. Mary's here, nobody's even near anybody else. There's hardly any community possible because you're not even physically near anybody else. And certainly, the fewer number of Masses in a parish, the better chance you have of getting to know your fellow parishioners. I shared this story this afternoon, and I've shared it elsewhere. When I was pastor in Oakville for 12 years at St. Dominic's, we had a very wonderful sacristan. She was a living saint. And I remember one year at the Easter Vigil, she said, she was meeting one of the sponsors, and she said, I don't know who that is. Are they in our parish? I said, yes, they come to Mass every Sunday. Well, I've never seen them before. I said, no, because you always go to the 9 o'clock Mass, and they always go to the 11 o'clock Mass. They didn't even know they're in the same parish. So we know that there's an advantage of having larger, maybe fewer celebrations, but larger celebrations with a greater number of people participating. A second reason why this is important in the diocese is that 4 Masses on a weekend, now you have more than one priest here, but in a parish where there's one priest and it's 4 Masses on a weekend, that is a very, very demanding schedule. Very demanding. And we don't have extra priests to help out anymore. We're getting really, really shy on that. We used to count very much on our retired priests to help out. And if a priest has to be away for a weekend or is on vacation, we can't get those retired priests anymore because most of them are not capable physically of celebrating more than 1 Mass. So in a parish that has 3 or 4 Masses, well, they might do 1, but what do you do with the other Masses? And there aren't a large number of retired priests that we can call on. So that's becoming a real problem for us. We are doing well with vocations in the diocese, and I know the Congregation of Resurrection is very excited because there's a new priest coming along the pipe very shortly. But the fact is that we just don't have quite the number that we'd like to have, and that would make things easier for us. So this year, for example, 2 more parishes, actually 4 parishes, were twinned, so that now one priest is looking after 2 parishes each. And I suspect that that may have to happen yet again this coming year. I'm not sure where yet, but it's the reality that we have. We have a parish that might have 500 parishioners, and they have 4 Masses. In another parish, I'm thinking one of it in Milton, there's 1 priest, 4 Masses on the weekend, 7 elementary schools, and a high school. So he is working himself to death, where another priest is semi-retired. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you get the idea. So we're really trying to work in the parishes and diocese to kind of even things out a little bit, but also use our resources more effectively. Our resources, buildings, and our people resources. So, and again, the bottom line of all of this is to keep the parishes going, keep them alive, make them vibrant. Just one last comment I would make is that many of you are aware that we are embarking on the first capital campaign in the diocese. There's never been one in over 160 years. The first one, and we're just getting revved up for it. It'll be launched in the new year. And those of you who are familiar with it, the material that's come out so far, you may know that 75% of the funds raised in this campaign are going to the parish. That is unheard of. The Stiers group, which is a consultancy group that we're using, say they have never ever heard of such a thing before. And they've never done anything like this before. It's usually 75% to the bishop and 20% to the parish, and or in one diocese, 100% to the cathedral, nothing to the parishes. Bishop Crosby feels so strongly about the strength of parishes that this is how we're set up the campaign. So it's really, again, strengthen parishes. Strong parishes make strong dioceses. So just some kind of background to where we're moving in the diocese, but also a little food for thought for you in terms of the Mass schedule here at St. Mary's.